So one of the most important parts of playing Borderlands 4 is going to be the 4 new Vault Hunters and choosing the Vault Hunter that's going to have a play style that you want to play around and build into. Now, while we have gotten a decent bit of information on all 4 of these Vault Hunters, we actually haven't seen any more specific information on any of the action skills for 3 of the Vault Hunters. And besides seeing a little bit of gameplay of them, we really haven't had a bunch of information laid out for all of our Vault Hunters. But there has been a decent bit of information we can glean just from looking at the footage and a few things the developers have said. So in this video, I want to go over the information we have on all 4 of the Vault Hunters, but I am going to be doing future videos going more into the specifics of the information of their different action skills, if we have any of that information yet. And I think some of the biggest information we've gotten on all of our new Vault Hunters is a bit of background we got off of the official Borderlands 4 website. So starting off, we have Vex, the Vault Hunter we have the most information on. She's going to be the Siren of Borderlands 4, and Vex had a rough upbringing that was made more complicated by receiving her Siren powers. Her cynical and sarcastic demeanor comes from having to fend for herself and scrape for everything she's got. But underneath her salty exterior, Vex is an empath who knows better than anyone how much life can suck. Ever the pessimist, Vex still believes in helping others, and if helping others means dealing damage to oppressive jerks, Vex will always be first in line. Now, Vex is also the main character we followed during the Borderlands 4 showcase, so we not only got a look at her skill tree and a few of her skills, but we've also gotten all 3 of her action skills named. But her 3 action skills are Incarnate. This is the one that gives her the big wings. This is more of a caster skill where she throws out these projectile blasts that do damage, and it seems that if she gets kills with those, it also spawns this like ball in the air that seems to hurt enemies in its area. Then we have Dead Ringer, which is probably the most interesting skill, where she can summon these different copies of herself. There's 2 different kinds. There's a ranged one that's the damage dealer, and there's a melee one, which is the big scythe wielder, which seems to have a taunt and be more of the tank. And it seems at a baseline she can have 3 of those up at a time, and she can have any mix she wants. Also, because of her trait, it allows her to change the elemental damage of her action skills. She could spawn 3 of these Dead Ringer copies and have them all be a different elemental damage type as well. So this skill is definitely going to be really crazy, I think, and I think there's going to be some ridiculous combinations that are probably really broken. Then finally, we have Phase Familiar, which you then have a permanent summon of Trouble, which as the name would suggest, it's this Phase Familiar she summons. It's this like cat or tiger, and you get it all of the time. Then you have your action skill that buffs it up and makes it do a bunch of damage, and then you have other things that can interact with it. So she is primarily going to be a summoner, but she still has Incarnate that seems to make her more of like a caster with her action skill. And then we have Rafa, who's the Exo-Soldier. Rafa was born and raised in microgravity, which severely altered his bone density and musculature, making it impossible for him to survive elsewhere. Desperate to explore, he signed up to TDR's military force. In exchange for a tour of duty, his body was altered for a new kind of exosuit. But when it became clear TDR never intended to end his service, Rafa went AWOL. Now he's on the run and plans to enjoy whatever time he has left before his TDR dead frame ends him for good. And this is a Vault Hunter we've seen the second most about, because this was kind of the other Vault Hunter we got a bit of a look at during the Borderlands 4 showcase, and we've actually gotten to see what seems to be his 3 different action skills. We don't really have any more specific information on it, but we've seen what the 3 different ones do. So to start off, we have his phase blade. So he digi-structs these 2 really big blades, and we got to see him use a little bit of it during the showcase. It looks like it has multiple different abilities to use when you actually summon the blades. It looked like he had a kind of a dash that he dashes to an enemy and hits him with the blades. Then he also had essentially like a blade storm or a whirlwind with his blades that will probably be incredibly strong because the radius of it was pretty ridiculous. The second action skill we've seen is where he digistructs this big looking pistol that seems to be a charge up that shoots this big blue blast at enemies. He also gets to keep out his other weapon when he's using this pistol. So kind of a pseudo dual wielding action skill, but it just looks like it's some action skill specific weapon. I would be surprised if some of the augments don't change up what weapon this actually is. Instead of being this kind of pistol, maybe it gets to pull out a shotgun or something. Then what seems to be the third action skill of his we got to see is he summons these little turrets on his shoulders, almost reminiscent of something like Zane's action skill from Borderlands 3, but it seems he has 2 of them, and based upon how strong Zane's was in Borderlands 3, this is a type of action skill that that would usually be really strong because you're just summoning it and then it's just a bunch of additional passive damage, probably based off of your damage in some way. And then next up we have Harlo the Gravitar. Harlo is a former Maliwan combat scientist driven by the need to understand how things work. While this initially made her an outcast amongst her Trant relatives, Harlo has used her intellect to bring new tech and gadgetry to the battlefield as a Vault Hunter. Harlo's brilliance is apparent in everything she does, but so is her enthusiasm and love for life. Harlo brings everything to the fight, including her sunny disposition, always ready to give a beatdown. Her spirit can't be beat. And it seems a lot of the theories the community had around Harlo ended up being true. We had her big Maliwan looking leg pieces, and now we know that she was a Maliwan scientist. And then a bunch of people were also theorizing that she is a Trant, and now that is also confirmed as well. And I would be very surprised if she is not the character that is fully elemental focused and in some ways able to very easily use a lot of different elemental damages. Now we've only seen 2 of her action skills so far. The first one we got to see is she summoned what looks to be kind of the front of a mech, and then she shot out this massive multicolored ball that is made of like this hex grid that also seems to be a lot of her technology made out of these different color hexes. But she shot this multicolored ball, seems to have every color of the rainbow, and it went through an enemy and put some debuff on them to put every one of those colors on them, and then it kept going and it blew up into what looked to be a nuclear blast in the background, something similar to how Roland used to have a nuke as well. Then her second action skill we saw was actually showed quite a bit during the showcase footage, or at least the trailer before the showcase, in that she gets to put people in these different balls and she gets to do it to a bunch of different people. And it seems that like all of her tech, they're kind of trapped in this hex grid of multi different colors. So we don't know if there's going to be anything else tied to this ability yet, or if it's just a CC where she has maybe multiple charges of it and she can just put a bunch of different enemies CC'd within these balls. Well, we do already know that you're still able to damage them, so kind of like Phase Grasp, but she can do it to multiple enemies at a time. And in her description, it does talk about gadgets, and the developers have also said that she will be very gadget focused, and that there's a lot of different gadgets that they haven't shown us that she has access to. And then finally, we have Aean, the Forge Knight. Aean was raised in a vault monster worshipping cult until the vault was open and the creature turned on everybody he loved. As the only survivor, he dedicates his life to finding and killing as many of these beasts as he can. Aean, a warrior poet, is introspective and unflinching to his duty, but despite his hardened appearance, he has a warm attitude, often regaling comrades in arms with stories and advice earned throughout his travels. So this is obviously the really big, bulky character, and we've seen a few of his different action skills, but based upon the information we have, we don't know how this is going to be working. So first off, in the first couple bit of trailers we got to see what looked to be 2 of his action skills. We got the action skill that we've seen multiple times where he summons his 2 big different elemental axes. One looks to be fire, one looks to be cryo, and we know he can throw those and they kind of blow up and do a bunch of damage. And in the cinematic trailer, it looked like he could also melee with those, so that may also be the possibility as well. Earlier on, we did also get to see what looks like him using a big like fire punch, where he does a big punch in front of him and then it did a big fire blast in front of him. And we don't actually know if that's an action skill, could be anything else. So it seems like one of his action skills will be this big frontal blast, because his action skills also seem to be spawned in by these little robots that create whatever he's spawning in from his action skill. Those little robots seem to be part of that punch, so we've seen those. Then we have also gotten to see an ice whip. Now we didn't actually get to see what character was using this, but during the PAX East panel with some of the Gearbox developers, they did also mention that a whip is one of his different weapons, and they mentioned a bunch of different weapons as well, like swords, axes, maces, so a bunch of different just medieval weapons, but they mentioned a lot more than 3, so we don't exactly know how he's working. We don't know if all of his action skills are going to be based on like a different weapon that then you can change in some way, or if he has one tree that's completely based upon spawning in these different weapons, and maybe depending on what augments or things he chooses, he gets to spawn in different weapons. So it seems like Aean is going to be able to in some way use use a bunch of these different medieval melee weapons, and he seems to be the more melee focused character because, as mentioned, even outside of those weapons spawning in, he did the big frontal punch, so it seems he's much more based on melee, even though again some of those spawned in weapons aren't specifically melee. But I would be very surprised if he doesn't have a lot of ways to go more into melee. But that's kind of an overview for all of the information we have on our 4 Vault Hunters coming with the launch of Borderlands 4. I will be doing more videos going over these Vault Hunters in their own video once we have more information on their action skills or other things they're able to do. And also keep in mind, we've already gotten the leaked information that we're getting 2 more Vault Hunters after the launch of Borderlands 4, seemingly in the first year of DLC and updates. So we will be getting more Vault Hunters, but I am very much liking all of the information we've gotten on all of these Vault Hunters so far. There's going to be crazy amounts of visual customization with all of them as well. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.